Welcome to episode number 4 of Foreign Object. Today's guest is Hayden Black. Hayden is a British actor and writer best known for the internet TV hit Goodnight Burbank and BBC America's The Brit List. In short, Hayden's contributions to the silver screen, television and radio are vast. But even more impressive is how funny he is on Twitter. 4 weeks ago, one of his tweets made me laugh like a pervert watching 16 and Pregnant. He tweeted Columbus Day, the only day where white conservatives celebrate an Hispanic guy coming to America. Which is an appropriate segue given to the central topic of today's chat is, what is it like to live in America as an immigrant, specifically a white immigrant? And with that, I welcome Hayden to the show. G'day, mate. How are you?
Good day, mate. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Listen to that rich British accent of yours.
Mellifluous tones.
Dulcet tones. So, mate, how long, when and why did you choose to make the United States home?
Well, I was actually a child when we moved here. My father wanted us to leave England. For many years, I thought it was because he was wanted for murder. But
they went to Australia, though.
I was about to say that would be an Australian thing. You're stepping on my lines.
Sorry, mate.
It's all right. I'm making up as I'm going along. No, we moved. It was towards the end of the 70s and the 80s. You had that whole winter of discontent, all the unions, acting up and strikes every 3 minutes, and a lot of people were emigrating from England at the time. And so my dad, wanted a better world for me and my younger sister.
So how come your accent hasn't been diluted?
It has been diluted slightly in ways that I've never tried to actively lose it, but the reason it's so prevalent is it's probably the only way I'm ever going to get laid.
Yeah, mate. It's so funny. Sometimes I walk into a bar or a pub in Southern California, and I can hear an Australian on the other side of the room, and oh my God, he sounds like he's doing a television commercial for the Outback Steakhouse, or he's doing an impersonation of Steve Irwin just to try and get attention from chicks.
Pull the stinger out of my chest. It doesn't hurt, I promise you.
Yes, exactly right.
I will tell you though, but having lived here so long, I've become a bizarre hybrid of both cultures to the point where there are some times when I don't know what I'm saying is American or English.
When you go back do you visit to the UK often?
I went back in 2010, and the last time before that was, I think, 20 odd years prior. So it was I'd been told for years that the culture had changed so much that I wouldn't recognize it, and I was almost scared to go back, because I would hate to get there to find out that the only thing that exists are my memories of the place, and that it's a whole new environment. But to my delight, I found out that just because that coffee shop was now a bookshop and that bookshop was now a coffee shop, the people were still the same.
Right.
There were a couple of Americanized massive parking lots, the IKEA-style parking lots here and there, that had blighted the landscape slightly, but only a handful that I saw. It was still predominantly the England I left behind back in the 80s.
Right, sorry. So to say again, you were eight years of age when you left?
No. I was, God, how old was I? 11 or 12.
11 or 12, okay.
And we moved to Florida, which, in the 80s, well, probably even now, is a vast waste of space, time, money, resources, and sperm. So, if you can tell, there's no love lost. My parents are still there.
Yeah.
But I really don't like going back there. I never liked it when I was there. So it's not,
Yeah, I've never been to Florida, and I've got to say it's a state that I have the least desire to go visit. I just imagine Confederates, but sunburnt Confederates, and as you said, a wasteland of timeshare salesmen. And
I thought would be a great new ride or a theme park is we actually saw Florida off, and then we can all stand on the one side, and obviously it'll take a few million years, but we can watch it drift away slowly but surely, and sell popcorn.
Yeah, absolutely. So, your parents, they live in the US?
Yeah, they're in Florida.
Okay.
My father owned a card and gift shop in England, and he, when we moved over here, he opened up one over here, and did that for a while. And then he sold maps.
Right.
So
Not maps to the stars.
no, well, there aren't many in Florida. But it was. I always think it was kind of a case of the blind leading the blind. You know,
Yeah.
you have this foreigner selling maps to tourists.
Yeah, that's funny. Now, I mean, so as a foreigner, I know you came here. You obviously came here very young. I mean, and you're a very astute political commentator, judging by your tweets. You like to comment on American politics, and
I do.
yeah, and I guess long-time followers of yours would probably even be surprised to know that you are British-born. So do you still consider yourself as an outsider looking in, or do you consider yourself an insider on the inside?
That's a great question. I
Sure.
think until I went back in 2010, I didn't know what to feel. I never really felt like I had a sense of closure with England, but because I immersed myself still in the culture and TV and music and all that kind of stuff from England that I still love, I didn't know where my home was. I mean, I own a house in Burbank, but I still didn't know where my home was. And when I went back, I realized to my absolute delight that I'm very blessed. I have two homes, one over there and one here. And so it made me really feel a kinship to America that I'd never actually felt before. And it was really nice.
Oh, that's interesting. And so, when you went back in 2010, what part of British culture did you feel like you had a longing for, or that left a hole in your soul, so to speak?
Well, I think the biggest difference culturally between the Brits and Americans is common sense. In that, in England, it just seems to be doled out to the majority at birth, and over here, it seems to be a special gift that only the lucky few have.
Yeah.
And so I've missed that. You know, and I'm also, I think, you know, you got the here's the thing, because I went through middle school and high school and college over here in the States. So I do have a kind of a unique view in that what makes Americans American, and I think it's first off, it's geographical. They're so far away, so far removed from their cultural motherland, Europe. You know, in Britain and Europe, and you know, you go to school in the mornings here in the grade school, and you've got to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's all about we're number one, and there's nothing wrong with any country, you know, having a healthy sense of ego. But I think with America, I think that the difference is because it's so far removed, it doesn't care about who number two might be, or three or four or five. And there's such a vast gulf between the Americans' perceived notion as number one and whoever number two might be. No one cares here. Whereas I think in Europe, when you're so close to every other place, you know, you can say quietly we're number one, but you know there are so many countries a stone's throw away.
That's so true. Americans do lack that comparative analysis for the fact that they are very isolated from the rest of the developed world, excluding Canada to the north. But you know, Jim Jeffries sums that up, the comedian. He says America number 27 in education, but number one in self-confidence.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that it's that. And it's that, you know, disdain for anything European, socialism, healthcare, being nice to people, but we believe in Jesus. It's just, you know, well, this country was obviously funded with this big fundamental streak through it. And it's interesting to see how it's evolved. And you've got this push and pull between the left and the right, you know, where you've got the left seems to be the ones, this is going to sound horrible now, with more of the common sense.
You're right.
Because here's why I look at it. Like, you can have conservative financial views, because it used to be that was the splitting point between both parties, is what you thought the government should do financially. Not spend your money, you know, how to spend your money. But I think over the last 20 years, it has become by far an ideological split. And you see what some of these just lunatic people some lunatic people on the right are saying, and I'm just surprised that there are well-meaning, well-intentioned, thoughtful people on the right not speaking up against some of the lunatics in their party.
Well, that's been one of, I guess, I've lived here for only 2 years. I was in Indonesia for 10 years.
Oh, you've got the new car smell then.
I do, that new interior. But that one of the most, I guess, shocking things to me about living in this country is how it really isn't a unified country. I mean, always suspected that, and I'd read enough on the Civil War dynamics in American politics to understand how polarized and partisan U.S. politics were. But I never really understood how ununified the country was, and how split along that Mason-Dixon line that everything. I mean, even on basic human rights. Or basic fundamentals, whether it's religion, taxation, healthcare, education, how government distributes wealth and or the distribution of public wealth, you name it. Americans are so, polarized on these basic issues, whereas in other Western developed countries, we seem to understand or appreciate that things like healthcare and education aren't privileges, they're basic human rights.
And it makes it all the more puzzling that a lot of the people that speak out against this kind of stuff call themselves compassionate Christians.
Mm.
And I can't reconcile the two. I don't understand how they arrive at this point, but they do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Christians in this country, and we're talking about the Christian right, obviously, because the Christian left were very instrumental in driving the civil rights movement, but the Christian right, if they actually followed the social gospel of the New Testament, there wouldn't be a problem. But they've turned Jesus into this hyper masculine union busting, white guy from Oklahoma.
Yeah, it is the dichotomy is ridiculous, and it's because of that I'm compelled to write these jokes. I think the best way, oftentimes, of getting people to think is to make them laugh first, and so that's the approach I generally try and take.
Yeah, and I guess that's a clever way to do it. Jon Stewart and these guys, they've said very eloquently that's their approach. If you can get somebody to laugh at irony, then that's always the first step in getting people to realize how stupid their prejudices are, or how idiotic that their fundamental beliefs are. So yeah, no, that's great. What I was going to say then to that point is what I find, I guess, in the U.S. politics now. I mean, I love America, and a lot of people confuse me for being anti-American, which is when my friends hear that they laugh hysterically, because they've always called me a wannabe American. I've loved America from the day I was a fetus. I've wanted to live here my whole life, so I'm living my dream. But
you're also living the Republicans' dream. A fetus, an American-loving fetus, is pretty much number one in their priorities of things to save.
I could shoot a gun at two. What drives me, wild is that these Republicans and these conservatives in this country, which you touched on, they really want to drive this country in the ditch. For the betterment of personal gain, for the betterment of corporate, for the enrichment of corporate overlords, mm-hmm. and so forth. There doesn't seem to be, as nice as Americans. I mean, I've always said this: if you travel through America, Americans are the friendliest people on the planet. They are the most hospitable. You walk into any small town in this country, and people will literally invite you into their homes. I can't think of any other country where people are as warm and gracious as they are here, individually. Collectively, if you put them all in the room together, then they really believe these very capricious, vindictive, cruel political ideologies, which looks down on the downtrodden, which looks down on the poor, which worships at the altar of corporate overlords, which worships at the altar of the rich. And
just to touch upon that, I think the Republicans have made a brilliant. Well, first off, they're far, far better at marketing than the Democrats are, which is bizarre because, anyone could, there's so many reasons to be able to market the Democrats' version of democracy, and yet that's not really done to not even full effect, hardly any effect. But what I think the Republicans do is they say to the people, look, the American dream is all about being rich, and one day you're going to be rich. So we know you're not rich yet, but you're going to be, because that's the American dream. So in the meantime, let's make sure that we pass all the right laws for the rich, of which you are going to be one day.
As John Steinbeck called them, temporarily embarrassed millionaires in waiting.
There you go, and that's most of the country, all of us included, and so I think people think, yeah, the American dream. I've been brought up with that. I've grown up with that. I am going to be rich, whether it's through a lottery ticket or whatever, and so everything is kind of they tend to grab them and make laws for the people who are already rich, and of course they're ensuring that the middle class and the poor stay that way.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I've underestimated with the American psyche is that rugged individualism. That the frontier man. Americans really do believe that you make it on your own. And people who don't make it, well, to hell with them. And that's they were pioneers, Americans. They had to go beyond the Mississippi.
Right.
They had to go into uncharted land. So there's a lot of America that I used to be critical of from the outside that I start to get, like particularly on guns, for example. It's very easy to be critical, as a Brit or an Australian and say Americans are just nuts when it comes to guns. But I understand it because everything America has achieved or attained has been through the barrel of a gun.
Through shooting your neighbor.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they got rid of the British, and then they got rid of the Spanish and the Mexicans in California.
That's true. They got rid of most of the Kennedys.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King.
That's hysterical.
We could go on.
I know, but I one of the things I was very angry with Australia, and I'll never forgive Australia for it, is in I think it was in 1998 we had a referendum to break away from the monarchy. That was an opportunity for Australia to stand on its own its own nationalistic identity, and we couldn't even vote for a revolution. We couldn't even cast a ballot. But America fought for its independence, and I've always admired America for that. And that's why I kind of get the whole gun thing.
I think that the gun issue over here boils down to two things. One is clearly people with mental issues having access to guns. So you've got the one issue is how do we deal more effectively with people with mental issues? Reagan turned them all, closed down all the institutions and turned them all out onto the streets. What do we do with people who are mentally ill through no fault of their own? And secondly, if you use the words gun control around people who like their guns, they don't hear gun control. They hear, I'm taking your guns away. And so the conversation, the debate never gets anywhere because of this word, this phrase, gun control. Even though, I don't have a gun. I don't know if I ever will. I don't lean one way or another. I think when I was younger, I thought, the idea of it sounded good, for protection's sake. But I don't live my life that scared or that frightened that I feel the need for a gun. But regardless, I don't necessarily want to take people's rights away to own a gun if that's what makes them happy and they want to go shoot at cans in the woods or whatever they want to do, target ranges, whatever. I'm not even decrying that. I'm saying whatever makes them happy.
Yep.
But there has to be some measures in place that try to not let certain guns fall easily into the hands of people who shouldn't be having them. And so if that means a couple more background checks, it means you have to wait 24 hours, whatever, 48 hours to get your gun, then fucking wait. 24 to 48 hours. No one wants to take your gun away. We just want to make sure the right people have it. But that debate is, no pun intended, dead in the water.
And that's one of the sad things. I mean, every time there's another high school shooting in America, now Sandy Hook, I believe, was the last stand of the gun control. I'm using that bad phraseology again. The last stand of anti-gun activists, and they were so defeated by the mobilization of the NRA, and it's like that now that whenever there's a high school shooting or a movie cinema shooting, there's not even an argument anymore. There's not even, you don't even hear an opposing view to gun control. It's
an absolute joke. And if I, what's funny is if I tell a joke intended to make people think on those types of days, jokes generally aimed at the NRA. The amount of people that will come across it, and I'll get responses from strangers saying, it's too soon to have that conversation. I'm like, you're just parroting crap back that you heard on Fox, which seems to be far more powerful than the ratings give it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, too, the problem is that there's so much special interest money in every political debate in this country that, hyperbole drowns out any sensible discussion.
It's true, and it's a shame, and I wonder what it'll take to get this country back on track, or if it's on this slow, inexorable slide towards God knows what.
Well, what makes you the most sad about America?
The inability for people to listen to other people. I think that that's a shame, because all conversation and dialogue doesn't really exist. It's just two sides shouting at one another. I often go to some of the conservative sites, I'll read a piece, and then I'll see what's in the comments. And more often than not, I'm sure you've seen this, you've got people on the right just screaming at people on the left as evil, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, they're just not, they're normal people with a slightly different take on life.
Are you living next door to a Chinese restaurant?
No, someone is at the front door. But, seeing as how nobody called me ahead of time to say they're coming, I'm not going to answer it, because probably somebody trying to sell something. But of course, my little dog, this is what he does.
Big bark.
Yeah, little dog, very big bark. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No, I think you're absolutely dead right. That's the I find it very frustrating that Americans now have given up on having a conversation when it comes to politics. Everybody's gone to their camps. They go to their online camp, their television camp. They're fed their own confirmation bias, and therefore, whenever you try and engage somebody on the other side who thinks differently to you, instantly the wall comes up, and that conversation is not to be had. If you mention even healthcare in passing, and you're in conversation with a conservative will just yell the last four things that they heard on Fox News. Obamacare, socialism, Marxism, Kenyan, and then you go, "What? We didn't even have a conversation."
Yeah, and I think that sounded like the lyrics to pop music.
Yes. Yeah, and people are talking past each other rather than actually delving into the issues.
Yeah, there's no dialogue anymore. It's just two sides yelling at one another, and that's all the news shows, the punditry has become. There's no interesting discourse, which is a real shame, But then again, that's to the people who care. There's also vast swaths of the country that are more than happy to not give a flying shit about politics and just play video games or basically have tuned the whole process out.
Okay, and on the flip side of that, what makes you most optimistic that America can right its wrongs and get the ship back on course?
I think little things like the emergence of the internet. I think it's a great rallying cry for both sides, for all sides of an issue. That people can not just communicate their own ideals, but be inspired by other people communicating theirs. Mm-hmm. More inspired than they would be if they were just watching television and didn't have an internet or a Facebook to play on. I don't think that people are going to change other people's opinions so much on the internet. I mean, you can chip away and try and show the different sides to an argument, but I think the idea that you can be made more aware of what's going on in this world is a fantastic thing. And so, I do believe that as corroded as it might have become or might appear, that the American heart is still strong. I think it's a very human thing. People still care for other people, I think, on a base level. When you take politics out of it, when you take, some of the baser things out, it's just left with, we're a society, and the only way we're really going to get anywhere is to act civilized to one another. And I think a lot of that comes innately with humanity. So I see, a great future for the country, but there's also a great fight ahead at the same time, which is to make sure that the corporations don't take too much and affect too much policy, even though it's already happening more and more. People have to kind of fight the good fight, and it's not, they're going to have to do a little bit more than just, sit on their sofa and give knee-jerk reactions to the news and then tune it all out and watch, crappy sitcoms all night.
Yeah, that's interesting. What made me, I guess I asked you what makes you optimistic, but and you gave a very good answer. But still, what makes me pessimistic is I believe the American voter class and the average American voter has been so demoralized by the influence of corporate money, the influence of the plutocratic and the oligarchic elite, that we saw in the midterms we had the lowest voter turnout since World War II, which is exactly what the corporate elite wants of the voting class. They don't want Americans to vote, and they've succeeded in doing that. And what I fear for the future of America is that it might be too late, that the corporations have such power and such overreach, and that the wealth disparity and the income inequality issues will never be addressed, that the political class or the voter class will never be energized and mobilized to vote. And I fear that Obama's presidency may have been, and I hope I'm wrong, may have been the last chance that a lot of voters
No, because here's why I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's a very, dystopian look at how we're all, we're going to turn into a Mad Max kind of society. Yeah. That's just a wonderful work of fiction, because I don't think human emotions run that way. Two things have changed since we came down from the trees. Cleanliness and technology, but human nature has remained essentially 100% the same. And I think that look how many people, for example, got so excited about Obama, and how many younger people got excited. That will happen again and again. And just like in the 90s when Tony Blair came into his prime minister position in England, off of that song, the D Ream song, "Things Will Only Get Better," which is what they took for their campaign song.
Yep.
And people believed it, and younger people believed it, and that's what helped sweep him into power. That will happen again here. It is a shame that Obama's presidency seems to have gone the same way that Tony Blair's prime ministership did, which is full of promise to begin with, and a little shy on delivered goods by the end of it. But that's, not to use Obama's phrase, but it's true. Hope will always be there. It is an essential ingredient of being human. And so, just because you or I might be jaded doesn't mean that there's not going to be other people who aren't, and new generations that haven't had time to be jaded yet that are going to come along.
Yeah, but structurally, the body politic has been so corrupted by the
it is becoming it is definitely becoming harder, and the with redistricting and these laws and that laws, certainly what's being put into place could look terrifying, and I think from a certain angle it is. I would prefer just the optimistic streak in me makes me want to think that even though that will be there, it will somehow be overcome one day by the right people.
I share your optimism for the future, because I share your optimism in the American can-do spirit, and that's that is the American exceptionalism. But
maybe in a twist of irony, it'll all be brought about by the use of lots and lots of guns.
Yes, yeah, no, but I believe the current system needs to be broken. I believe that. There almost has to be a revolution. You have to break the two-party system. The Democrats only really serve one purpose, and that's to stop the Republican Party going full fascist.
I agree. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and the Democrats are as beholden to Wall Street as
right. No, they're the lesser of two evils, but there's still two evils at the end of the day.
Exactly, and I don't know what that looks like. This is what I find frustrating as a writer or a journalist is. What does revolution look like? What is it? Does it mean pitchforks in the street? Does it mean a complete bust up? Does it mean a third party which has been tried and failed? Does it
it only failed in so much as it was Ross Perot, and he was talking away in his very distinctive Southern twang, and shuck things up for all of, I don't know, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But both parties came to agree very quickly that no more third parties will be allowed into national debate. And both parties did that. Both parties made sure that there wouldn't really ever be a third or fourth party.
Yeah, and that's troubling. I mean, that you don't have. I mean, if the Democrats haven't learned a lesson from this midterm, and the lesson was clear that the working class need representation, and that's why the working class aren't turning up and voting. But what's going to make the Democrats represent the working class when, a recent Princeton study came out and said that 95% of Americans have no influence over domestic policy whatsoever, and that's how corrosive and pervasive is the wash of corporate money on the body politic.
And you've just got panaceas out there like video games and all this kind of stuff and music and entertainment just to, opium of the masses. It really does work on most people. They don't care enough to stand up and be counted and to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. This needs to change.
Well, you touched on this point earlier, and that's where the Republicans have been masterful, and that is they talk in emotion, whereas Democrats appeal to logic. But every psychologist will tell you we respond more to infantile emotionalism than we do to reason and logic, and Democrats haven't learned how to phrase issues into bumper slogans.
No, and it's true because I'm only doing the show because you promised me a stripper.
It's coming.
And that could have been her at the door.
It was, your dog scared her away. God damn it.
Damn, not again. That dog's so cute, but such a cock blocker at the same time.
What kind of dog was it? Sound like a Shih Tzu?
And he can be a little shit when he wants to be. It's a Yorkshire Terrier.
Okay. Oh, see, you're still attachment to the homeland.
Well, the real attachment, his name is Salford, which is where I'm from, next to Manchester.
Okay. Do you still follow cricket?
No, I've never really been a big sports nut, to be honest with you. So I can't claim to follow any of it.
Okay.
Anything. Period.
That's good. So when you went back to the UK, and just to revisit that again for a second, did British people confuse you as an American?
They heard the American in my voice because apparently I go up at the end of sentences, which is entirely subconscious. It wasn't anything I tried to do. But a few people commented on that, which I found interesting. But I think to me the most interesting thing when I went back is I spent a week in London on business, and I then went back to Manchester for an extended weekend, and I stayed with my cousin and her family, and it was like a Saturday night, and she's watching her television. Two twins were playing Monopoly, like two 10-year-olds, and fighting and playing, and what kids do. And her husband was doing the ironing, and that expression, you could never go back. I looked at this family and I thought, I've gone back. This is how this is ostensibly my life. Growing up as a child, the only difference, my father would never have picked up an iron if his life depended on it. But this is how we would live, in just this in a very provincial way, but it was very cozy. It was amazingly cozy.
So if where you lived, or just say England is the Monopoly board, on what street did you live on?
Oh dear God, Monopoly board. What was it, Old Kent Road? Is that one of the worst ones on there?
Yeah, I think that's the purple one.
Yeah, well, we certainly didn't have money. I would say we were lower middle class.
Right.
In England, but we had a house. It was our own house. It was a proper house. It wasn't attached to any other homes. 4-bedroom, I think. And of course, this being England in the 70s and 80s, a toilet in one room and a bathroom in another. Nothing combined. But hey, it wasn't an outhouse, which I think my father must have had when he was a kid.
Yeah, that was stock stand in Australia. I guess when you went back to Britain, one thing I guess I noticed, a big difference and I'm assuming it's the same in Britain. I mean, I've spent enough time in Scotland and England over the years to know that Australian and British culture is very similar in the sense that they're both very egalitarian, and both cultures revolve around the pub. In Australia, one thing I miss about Australia is the fact that you can walk into a pub and it's classless. Doctors and lawyers mingle with plumbers and garbage collectors and you name it. Whereas America is very class conscious.
Well, I think what you're describing there is more LA, because I lived in New York for a while, and the culture there was very much that. People had their favorite pubs because it wasn't just one industry in New York. You had plumbers mingling with businessmen, whatever, in some of the pubs. But it was, I think, certainly out here in LA, where you have to drive everywhere. That culture doesn't really exist. I remember when I first moved out here, people would say, "Oh, you're suffering from culture shock," and I'd joke back, "Oh, I'm suffering from no culture shock, ha ha." But then I realized LA actually has plenty of culture. There's just no fucking parking. You have to drive by it and just grit your teeth. So I do think that culture of the drinking and the egalitarian and socializing, amongst classes does exist, but just not everywhere. And of course, we've got to remember, this is a vast, vast country. So I think you're going to find cultures of all sorts all over the place, just not one big national one.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, mate. And so what are you working on at the moment?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to do a little animated series based on the daft tweets that I do, called Teensy Tweets, which is basically just, animating these little 10, 20, 30-second jokes together. And I just embarked a few days ago on my next production. I'm taking a half-hour sitcom that I wrote about 4 college kids, what it's like to be in college today. And just that age in general. And it's going to be animated. The whole thing is going to be animated by a lovely lady in Germany.
Right.
And so I've just started the process of casting it and producing it in general. So that should be out, I don't know, sometime next year.
Oh, okay. And where can people find that?
Well, when it's ready, the working title is Gen Z. It'll most likely be on YouTube. But that's a ways away. I think for now, if anyone wants to read my stupid jokes, Twitter is the place to do it, which is at Hayden Black. I try to keep it very simple.
Yeah, and so and just a bit of commentary, I guess, on the way that the media market is going. Is there money for producers of good content in YouTube and so forth?
I think, when I started doing the internet stuff, it was 2006, so it was really ahead of the curve. And I think it was December of 2007, Time magazine had their Person of the Year, and it was the mirrored cover, so it was you being on the internet. And I think the rush for people to upload stuff has been ridiculous, which is why I think the networks and all the studios held back just to see what it was going to be like before they started stepping in. I think the internet it's a great breeding ground for you to grow and learn from, but a lot of people in their rush to upload stuff don't bother with developing ideas and doing something well. And so we're seeing, I think it's just so, because of that, there's a shit ton of brushwood out there. There's just so much crap, but there's also increasingly more and more really good entertainment on the web. And as far as the money goes, either it's that old adage, you need money to make money. You need to spend money on marketing, so you can be seen through the brushwood. So if you're lucky, you can. I've been lucky here and there and made some money. And then there's been other times where there's been nothing. It's just a wonderful roller coaster ride. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. And where's the easiest place for people to find you other than Twitter?
Well, I live on Facebook as well, so people are more than welcome to add me there. And if anyone in the States, because this is right now, it's still only North America can see this, but if they want to see Goodnight Burbank, which was the first half-hour show ever made for the web, and amazingly, and I mean amazingly in that I'm so lucky way,
sure,
that the day it premiered on Hulu, Mark Cuban happened to be watching and picked it up for HDNet, so it went straight to cable.
Wow. Wow.
So it was the first half-hour show ever made for the web, and the first, and I think so far only half-hour show that's gone from the web to television.
Wow.
So if anyone in North America wants to see that, they can go over to hulu.com/goodnightburbank. And there's 6 half-hour episodes with the amazing, unbelievably talented Laura Silverman, Dominic Monaghan, Jim Rash, just a host of names and faces that you will all recognize.
Terrific, mate. That's fantastic. Well, mate, Hayden, thanks for coming on the show. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you for having me.
Mate, that's been great. And, it's we both love America dearly. We want America to be a better country.
Definitely do.
Yeah, we want it to improve where it's failing and to be better where it's succeeding. So, mate, great conversation. And, mate, all the best with your future projects.
You too, CJ. Thank you so much.
Good on you, mate. Chat to you soon.
Cheers.